11 phones dropped off the network in the same second, and the cause was me. I had set every device in the rack to run its nightly cleanup at 3 in the morning. 3 is a nice round number, and I wanted the fleet consistent. So at 3, 100 and some Android handsets woke up together, pulled updates, cleared caches, and phoned home through one uplink. The uplink did what uplinks do under that. The health checker watched 11 phones stop answering inside the same second and paged me. Nothing was actually broken. I had built that outage by hand, out of tidiness. I run a rack of real Android phones in Singapore. Not emulators, not virtual instances. Actual handsets sitting on shelves, each with its own SIM and its own Singapore mobile IP, rented out to people who drive them remotely through a browser view or over ADB. So fleet management is my day job, and it has a contradiction in the middle of it that nobody warns you about. The contradiction: operationally you want every phone configured the same way. Variation is what makes a fleet unmanageable. If phone 40 behaves differently from phone 6, every debugging session starts from zero, and every runbook grows an exception. But a set of phones configured identically is itself a pattern. Same build, same app list, same keyboard, same dozen toggles flip the same direction, all doing the same thing at the same second. One person running a script produces exactly that. 100 independent people produce noise. Both of those things are true at once. The whole job is knowing which parts of sameness are free and which parts are the tell, where sameness costs nothing. Start with the build. Every phone on the same Android version, on the same security patch date, and you should be able to say what that date is without going to look. This one is worth saying plainly because people get it backwards. A fleet where every device is on the same patch is not suspicious. Millions of real handsets share a patch level, because that is how vendors ship. The phone that looks odd is the one 3 years behind on a build nobody else runs. Monitoring is the same story. One health check, one set of thresholds, one log format applied to every phone. That is internal. Nothing outside the rack can see it, and the day one phone is weird you want to be comparing it against 99 identical measurements. Naming and inventory, absolutely uniform. Every phone gets exactly one name. The name never changes, and every other system refers to it by that name and nothing else. I will come back to this because it is the part that actually hurts. Backup and restore procedure, uniform. The procedure, not the contents. The steps for rebuilding any phone in the fleet should be the same steps, so that rebuilding one at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday is boring. What goes back onto each phone is a different question. Power, cooling, cabling, all of it uniform. I learned that one the expensive way with a bus-powered hub that dropped modems under load. 30 devices on one hub means 30 devices sharing one failure, where sameness is the problem. Now the other list, and it is shorter but it costs more. App sets. If every phone in the fleet carries the same 14 packages and nothing else, that set is a signature. Real phones accumulate junk. A weather app somebody installed once, a bank app, a food delivery app, a game that got played twice. I keep a small pool of harmless extras and let each phone carry a different handful, locale and keyboard. A rack in Singapore where every device reports the same locale, the same keyboard, the same 24-hour clock, and the same wallpaper is a rack that agrees with itself too much. Keyboards in particular, because the keyboard is one of the things an app can see. Anything the device reports about itself that a real owner would have set differently. Screen timeout, notification sounds, whether battery saver is on, whether developer options are enabled, which for a lot of fleets is yes on every single unit, forever, which almost nobody does on a personal phone, and the timing of scheduled work, which is the loudest one of all and the one I want to spend the most time on. The clock is the loudest signal you emit. Everything above is a snapshot. A snapshot is one comparison. Timing is a stream, and the stream gives away far more than a snapshot does. If 100 devices become active within the same 2-second window every night, and go quiet within the same window, and each one performs the same sequence of actions in the same order, you have not built 100 phones. You have built one phone that exists in 100 places. Worse, the correlation survives everything else you did. You can give every device a different IP, a different SIM, a different app set, a different name, and the clock still ties them together. It is the cheapest thing in the world for a platform to compute too. Group events by minute. Look for buckets that are too full. That is one query. I am not writing this as evasion advice. Keep whatever you run on rented device legitimate and inside each platform's rules. The point is more boring than that. Even completely legitimate separate operations get lumped together when they behave like one process, and then you are explaining yourself for a reason that had nothing to do with what you were actually doing. Stagger it on purpose. So stagger. But stagger properly, because there is a wrong way that feels right. The wrong way is a random delay, picked fresh at each run. Phone 12 fires at 3:06 tonight, 3:51 tomorrow, 3:19 the night after. Two problems with that. The first is that nothing real reschedules itself every night. A person's habits are stable. A device that jitters differently every day is describing a random number generator, not a human. The second problem is yours, not theirs. When something breaks at 3:19 on a Wednesday, you want to know instantly which phone that was. With fresh randomness every night, you cannot. You have made your own logs unreadable to save yourself 10 minutes of thought. What I do instead is deterministic. Take the phone's name, hash it, take the remainder against the size of the window you want, and that is that phone's offset. Forever. Phone 12 runs at 3:06 tonight and 3:06 next month. The fleet spreads across 90 minutes. Each device holds its own habit, and my logs still make sense. Within the window, more than feels necessary. I started with 15 minutes and it was not enough, because 100 devices across 15 minutes still leaves a visible clump and still hammers the uplink. 90 minutes for a nightly job. For anything hourly, I push the spread wider than the interval, so the buckets never line up cleanly. And stagger the sequence too, not only the start. If every phone does the same 5 things in the same order, the order is the fingerprint even when the start times differ. Shuffle the independent steps per device, deterministically, same as the offset. The operational payoff is real and separate from all of that. Staggered work does not spike the uplink, it does not brown out a hub, it does not make 11 phones look dead at once. I would do it now even if nobody were watching, which is roughly where the 3 in the morning story left me. Which phone is that actually? Here is the part that is genuinely hard at scale, and it is not about patterns at all. There are at least 3 systems in my setup that each hold an opinion about which physical device is which. The billing site knows a customer paid for a phone, and which phone that is. The device manager knows which handsets are registered, reachable, and visible to whom, and the rack knows which unit is physically in which slot, on which hub, on which shelf. When those 3 agree, everything is calm. They do not always agree. They drift in ordinary ways. A handset dies and gets swapped, and the tape label on the shelf does not get updated. The device manager re-registers a phone under a serial after a reflash and quietly creates a second entry. A customer's subscription ends and the billing record releases the phone, while the device manager still has them in a group with access. An allocation row gets written, and the thing it points at never comes back. None of that is exotic. All of it happens on a normal month, and every instance of it is a small lie sitting in a database waiting for someone to trust it. So the identifier matters more than anything else in this video. One name per phone, generated once, never reused even after the handset is retired, printed on a physical label stuck to the device itself, and used verbatim by every system that has an opinion. No system gets to invent its own naming. No system gets to key on a serial number, because serials move when hardware moves. And then a reconciler, a job that runs daily, reads all 3 sources, and prints every disagreement it finds. Mine runs early morning and mails me a list. One warning about that: learn properly. The first month of a reconciler's output is mostly the reconciler's own bugs. Mine confidently reported devices as dead that were fine, because it was matching on a substring that 2 different naming schemes both happen to contain. So let it report only. Do not give it the power to fix anything until you have read its findings every day for a few weeks and stop disagreeing with it. The thing I got wrong: I wiped a phone that belonged to a paying customer. The rack label said one thing, the billing record said the same thing, and both were wrong in the same direction, because 2 weeks earlier I had swapped a dead handset into that slot, and updated exactly one of the 3 places that needed updating. The device manager had it right. I did not check the device manager because 2 out of 3 felt like enough. The customer lost a working setup, and I lost a day rebuilding it. The fix was making the reconciler run every morning, and refusing to touch any device until all 3 sources agreed on what it was. I already had a process document. It said check the label. 2 out of 3 is not a quorum when the third one is the only system talking to the actual hardware. If you run 10 phones instead of 100, most of this still applies, and it applies earlier than you think. 10 is already enough for a synchronized schedule to look synchronized, and 10 is already enough to lose track of which device is which after a couple of swaps. What changes is the tooling, not the discipline. At 10 phones a text file and a daily glance does the reconciler's job fine. At 100 it does not, and the transition happens quietly, some evening when you are tired and you trust the label. Pick the names before you need them. That is the one decision that gets harder every week you delay it. If you want phones on real hardware in Singapore, with a persistent mobile IP each and AWS access, everything is at cloud.one. Subscribe for more on cloud phones and running them at scale.